Hi, I know some of you are interested in installing Linux Mint operating system inside of a virtual machine, perhaps, if you don't have another old computer that you want to completely reconfigure. And so one great way to do that is to use VirtualBox hypervisor, and you can download VirtualBox from the internet and receive it free of charge. You can see that I have a lot of virtual machines already stacked up on this machine, but when you start fresh, you'll have an empty panel here on the left. In either case, you will want to click on Machine and choose New. And we are going to create, you can give it whatever name you want. I'm going to call it Linux Mint. And the version number that I happen to be using is 17.3, and I have a 64-bit ISO file. It is of type Linux, and Mint is a derivation of Ubuntu, so I chose Ubuntu 64-bit off the list. The recommended memory size is at least 1 gig. I have enough space that I can allocate a bit more than that, so I will. I would say that probably, if possible, if your host computer has ample RAM, to give it at least 2 gigs of RAM. You can choose the defaults for the next 2 screens. Dynamically allocated would be fine for the hard disk. We'll choose the default here for the virtual hard disk megabytes. And we now have a bare machine. So now I'm going to take my disk and put it in the drive bay in the computer. And I would like to right-click and normally start my machine. That's just a message from. Okay. So at this point, I'm being asked to select the startup disk. So I want to select a optical disk file or a physical optical drive containing the ISO for my operating system. So in my case, the E drive is my optical drive. If you have it somewhere else, you can choose that. You will see the Linux Mint logo. And the loading of the OS continues. It does take a few minutes, so be patient. During the time that it is loading, you may also see some messages here about the guest operating system, which is the Linux, either supporting or not supporting mouse pointer integration. They'll cycle through a few messages there. In the end, you probably will successfully have mouse pointer integration, which means that you'll be able to use your mouse normally inside the virtual machine. I'll just tell you that some number of minutes went by there, and I just patiently waited. So now finally I see a desktop, at which point I actually want to install Mint onto my virtual hard drive. Right now I'm running Mint from the optical media, and although possible, that is very slow. So you'll actually want to install and choose your language, which will be English. Continue. We want to verify that we're plugged in, connected to the internet, and have sufficient hard drive. I can click continue. So this computer has no detected operating system. What would I like to do? I want to install Linux Mint directly inside this VM. Okay, this should be fine. Time zone is good at New York, Eastern Time. We will keep this default at English keyboard. I'll put in my name. My username can be NOS120 for the class. We're going to just use the Linux intro password for now. If you want a stronger password, just make sure that you remember it. We do want to require the password to log in, and continue. You'll see the thermometer bar indicating that files are being copied, and along the way you'll get some little introductory messages, some reminders, a little slideshow will show you around while the system is being installed on the computer. You could click through the slideshow and get some more information if you would like to do that, or you can just patiently wait while files are copied. I'll take a little break and come back when that part is complete. So we're getting close to being finished copying all the files. I can hear the drive clicking. Now we're installing the system to our virtual disk. You'll see some messages about configuration and retrieving files. That will, again, take a few minutes to complete. So, again, be patient. And finally, you will see your desktop with the current time displayed. And then a few more files will be retrieved. You'll see a lot of configurations and downloads and preparations of packages. It does take a little bit of time to download all this. So again, we'll pause for a few minutes and just remind you to be patient as this all completes. Finally, you'll see the message, installation complete. And we can continue testing our Linux Mint if you want to run it through its paces, but it's, I'm sure, just fine. So let's restart our machine and get started. You can see the machine's going to go down for a reboot. You don't have to worry too much about all these messages that you're seeing on the screen. At this point, my drive bay opened and my disk was ejected. So from now on, the system will be working not from files on the disk, but on my virtual hard drive. And finally, our machine returns. Now, if you see login, then make sure you click up here on the user you created. And then we will enter our password, whatever you set as your password. Click OK. And we should be ready to begin. Now this should be familiar to the Linux Mint desktop that you are familiar with from class. And it may take a few more minutes for some of the icons to load. But when that is complete, everything should look pretty familiar to you. And here we have the splash screen you often see. If you don't want to see that each time you boot up, you can unclick the dialog box to not see that at startup each time, and dismiss that box. And now everything should look very familiar to you. You have the menu with all your familiar icons, the terminal, which you can open to access the command line interface, and you have access to Linux now within a virtual machine. Have fun.